I'm going to create a page for holding the search component. So I'll call it as a search page. Okay, I'll call it as a search page. So I'll go to my template. I'll duplicate the app root. I'll create a new template called search and change its display name to search. Okay, so this is the search page. Now let me create my search page. So that's my search page. Perfect. Altogether searching products. Okay, so we got the search page up and running. Now let's implement the component. So let me go to Bootstrap. I'll take some. I'll take this navbar example. In the navbar, we have a search example. Yeah, this one. You see here. So we'll take this one. So it is having a search text box and a search button. We'll use this for our search component. Okay. So first thing I'm doing is I'm going into React and creating a search component. Okay. So going into my React application, JSS scaffold product search. Okay. I'll call it as product search. Perfect. We have my search component here. I'll change it as a class so that I can do some coding. Perfect. So in this, I'm going to add my style sheet. Sorry, my bootstrap option for the search, changing all the classes to class name. And I think Bootstrap is making a mistake here. The input tag is not having a close tag. I'll add a close tag for this. So let me start this. This is start connected. Okay, ready? Now this one will not come on the page because I have not created the search component on the Sitecore yet. Okay. Okay, first I'll do that as well before running this. So JSS deploy component product search. JSS deploy component product search. So if it in case if it is not visible for you guys. Okay. So then I'll start. Okay, when this is running, I'm going into Sitecore and I should have the new rendering created. So let me go and see the new rendering. That is product search. There you go. And it is having out of the box resolver and the component name is product search. I have to add this component onto my search page. So I'm going into my template, project, NextJs app. I'm going into my search template, go to the standard values, presentation details. I will add this component onto my page. And add a data source for that. I'll provide the same page as the data source. Perfect. Done. All right, this name, dollar name. in case if it is required. Okay, fine. So I have added the page component onto the page, and the component should be down now visible on the UI. So if I go and refresh my search component, I should see a hard-coded search on the screen. Okay, it is coming from Bootstrap classes, so as simple as that. So when I'm giving a search term here, for example, I'm giving a product name, iPhone, and click on search, it has to do the search for me. Okay, right? So the requirement is you do a search, like if I say Galaxy here and click on search, that should bring me the all the Galaxy mobile phones output in my page and display it on the page. Okay, so I can achieve it through layout service resolver, but it is, since it is a button click call, so I have to make a button click call. It's not a page load call, it's a button click call, and I don't want the page to reload. So what I do is instead I can make a ajax call. I won't be using any props for this, so I'm just removing it. I won't be using any props for this. So there is no data coming from layout service that I'm going to show on the page. Okay, so I'm just removing that. In the search input box, I will have a value. Okay, and the value that the user is providing, I'm capturing it in a variable called query. Okay, capturing it in a variable called query. So this variable is I'm just creating this as a state in React. So I'll just import use state from React. Okay, and I'm creating this variable as a state. So I'll create a constant query variable, and I will have a set query method to set the variable on change. Okay, so initially the state of this variable will be empty. Okay, cool. Now there will be a set query method which will set the variable. So where will the set query method be called? When I'm changing this value in the input. So there is an on change event, and I'm changing this, which means it has to call the set query and set the query variable, right? For that I'm creating a method handle input change. Okay, I'm handling the input change. Input value is changed, so I'm handling that. So I'm creating a method called handle input change, and I'm calling the set query method for setting the variable. So from the event, I'm calling the target dot value. So I'm not sure why this error is throwing here. It is saying implicit type. So if I do a quick fix, it is saying target value state action string. So it is setting the type of the input value. It making sure that whatever is coming is a string. So it is setting the value. So it is importing set state action for that. When somebody is making a change on the text box, now that is captured as part of the query. Okay, fine. Now if somebody is clicking on the button, it has to go and submit it, right? It has to go and submit it. So in the button, I'm going to add a handle submit method. On click, I have to handle my submit action. Handle submit method. So I'm going to add one more method here, handle submit. Here the event is just the event variable is used just to do the prevent default, which means if I say control dot here info parameter, it is just doing a void value. So there is no input value coming from this event. Good. Handle submit method. In this method, I'm going to call a third party API. So I'm doing a try catch. Because it is a third party API, it can do error out. So if there is an error, I will just capture that error. I'm just capturing that error. And writing it in console. And what am I going to do in the try? I'm going to call a third party API. Constant response equal to await fetch. It can be anything, any URL. So I'll say product API slash search. Okay. And I will add the query in the query string. So I will make this as a interpolation string. And in the query string, I will add the query variable. Whatever is been filled in the text box, I'm putting that in the API. Okay. So let me console log the response. So it is throwing error here because allowed within async function. So this should be an async function. So I have to add async here. Okay. Handle submit. So once you click on that, it goes and calls this API, some API. We don't know what API yet because our backend developer have not given us the API, or maybe I have not developed the API as a front end developer or a full stack developer, right? We have not developed the API. We are just writing the front end code for it. Okay. We are assuming that we will be calling this endpoint, and that is going to give me a result, right? That is going to give me a result. So what is that result? The result, I can now define the result. Okay, it's a search output. It's a product search, and I will be having couple of fields in it, title and description, right? So let me define the type of this return type first. So at the top, I'm going to define a interface. I'll call it as search result, and it'll have a search title, which is a string, and a search description, which is a string as well. Okay, I'm defining an interface for that. So it will have a search title and description. Yeah, if I want, I can also add a search URL. So that if you click on that search output, it takes you to the corresponding product page. Okay, so it's a product search that you're doing. So I'm capturing it as part of the type search result. Okay, so since it is search result, now I have to handle this result data that in a state as well. So I will add one more state here, which is having a results in it, and set result method, set results method. I'm using state for it, and this state is of type search result. It's not of type search result, it's of type search result array, because it will be having multiple data in it, right? And initialize it with an empty array. Okay, so I have a result variable which will capture the result from the response of this fetch query. Okay, so this is where the response is. I will take off this console log, and instead I will say if response dot okay. If response is okay, then I'm going to get the search result, populate the search result with my response converted as JSON. I'm going to populate my search result with my response converted as JSON. If the response is okay, I'm going to populate my search result data converted as JSON. Okay, so how do I populate? I can say set results of data. Set results of data. Okay, I will do a console log of data as well, so that we get the response printed on the console. If response is not okay, I will console log that as well. I will say error in fetching data through custom API. As simple as that. Okay, now I have populated my result variable through the set result data. Okay, set result data will go and populate the result variable. I have to use that result variable to display the content on the UI, right? I have to use the result variable to display the content on the UI. So for that, after the form, I'm writing another div here. This is the search result. Okay, this is the search result. So if I have anything in the result, if length is greater than 0, then I will have my search result output. Okay, if length is greater than 0, I will have my search result output. If it is not greater than 0, if length is not greater than 0, I'll simply display no results found. Simply display a method no results found. Okay, so this is where I have to populate my search result now. Okay, so for that I will add a unordered list, because it is a list, right? Under the unordered list, now I'm going to print my result. So result dot map result item result index, and this is where we are going to print the result is ampersand. Okay, and this is where we are going to print the result. Okay, the result will be part of a, okay, instead of div I will put directly a li. Okay, and the li will have a key, and the key will be result item result index. So that each and every li will be having that unique value, unique index value. Okay, and there will be a anchor tab which will point me to the result item. So in my result item, I will be having a search URL, right? So result item dot search URL, which will navigate me to the corresponding page, and the text will be result item dot title, and there will be a p tag which will say result item dot description. Okay, done. So I have printed the search result output. As long as this API is providing me the output, I will be having the output getting displayed on my UI. Perfect. UI. Let me go and check it on the screen. This is the search component. As of now, no results found. So if I'm looking for a search, it has to display. So now when I click on search, it is making a call. You see here, it is making a call and it is saying not found, because it is making a call to localhost 3000 product API search query Galaxy. So it is doing this call perfectly. So it is Galaxy is being set for the query variable and taken from the text box and set for the query variable, calling the API as the query parameter. And since it is not found, the endpoint is not there, it is throwing you 404 not found. Clear? Now let's create this API, custom API in Sitecore. I have to go to Web API and create a Web API controller. I'm doing it again in case if you have missed it out. Right click on the controllers folder, add controller, and make sure you choose Web API and Web API empty controller. Okay, I'll create product search controller. Okay, so it is basically it will inherit a API controller so that it acts as an API for us. Okay, so this controller will have a action method public void get search result. Get search result. It will accept the query string. Okay, we in our query we have the variable name is query, right? Variable name is query in our query string. So I'm keeping it as query here so that it resolves to that variable. Okay, so if string dot is null or empty, if query is null or empty, I'm just returning it. Okay, so I should return a search result, right? I should return a search result, right? So let me add a model for that. So I'll go to model, add a new class. So I'm going to return a product search result, right? So product result item. So product result item will have fields. What are all the fields that we have used in our interface? Search title, search description, search URL. I'm going to use the same thing here because it has to match, right? The result item should match with the item because directly I'm putting the result. I'm taking the result response, converting it as JSON, directly putting it into search result array. So it has to match. So I'm putting the same field names here. search description and search URL. This search URL. Okay. Now this search result will give me a list of product result item, right? It is going to give me a list of product result item. That means if the query is empty, I have to return a new list of product result item, empty result of product result item. So if I'm returning empty result, what will be the output in my front end? Empty result is there. That means the count will be 0. So since the count is 0, it will simply display no result found. Okay, great. If query is not there, it is going to display no result found. Now I have to do a search. For doing a search, we have to scan our Sitecore content database for a particular query, right? Scan the database for a particular query. Now scanning this database means it has to go through each and every Sitecore item and find out if this particular query is matching with any Sitecore item and bring that Sitecore item to me. Okay, it is going to be a very costly affair. Why? Because it has to scan the complete Sitecore content tree to understand where it is coming from, where the data is. It's going to be a very expensive search. So normally what Sitecore does is, no, for that matter, all the content management system does is they will index their content through a search provider. Okay, they will index their content through a search provider. So whenever we are installing Sitecore in our local, we would have definitely indexed it through something called Solr. Okay, so Sitecore have provided us an API called Content Search API, which will now help us in reading the data from the Solr database. Solr will index the Sitecore content and keep it in their NoSQL database so that it is easy for us to access it. It will be faster for us to access it. Compared to the time that it takes to access the data from Sitecore database, if you are trying to access it from Solr indexes, it will be much quicker. Okay, so you would have seen while installing, you would have installed a Solr instance, and that Solr instance would be running in a port number called localhost 8984 or 83. Depends on what port number you are running the Solr. You would be having your instance running in your machine. Yeah, the Solr will be like this, and it will have different cores based on your database. So in our case, we will have a web. So SC4 is my instance name, underscore web underscore index is the index for the web database. I can go for SC4 master underscore index for the master database. Okay, each and every database data is created as index here. I can create my own custom index. I can create my computed index and stuff like that. These are all customizations that we can do in Sitecore level. We are not going into all those things. So I'm just concentrating on querying the index. Okay, I'm going into query, and let me just click execute this query. It will bring me all the templates, all the content available inside the web database. So there are 1056 pages available. Okay, so here I'm just concentrating on the template template. What template I want? I wanted a product, right? It's a product search. So I will concentrate on this template, custom product. Custom product, execute. Yeah, so template name is the field. I'm just filtering it on the custom products. I'm finding out, I'm getting 4 values output. You can see here the output is giving me all the details. So I can just get only those details that I needed. That is, I want what? I want a title. I want the title and description. There you go. We have the title and description. Okay, so we have three data, title and description. There is a fourth data which is empty because it is standard values. Okay, so this is what we are going to get now. So I'm going to search for this. So it has come in few seconds for me, this data. I'm going to give my query and search for content inside this. Okay. Okay. For that, first we need to get the index. Okay, get the index. Okay, so what is the index? I'm looking for this index, right? So even though we have SE4, SE4 is my instance name. If I if this is my local instance, so I'll call it as SE4. If it goes to my higher environment, I will call it as my brand name underscore dev underscore web underscore index. So it will be kind of like dev environment means if our brand is BMW dev underscore web underscore index. If it is UAT BMW UAT underscore web underscore index. Production means BMW underscore web underscore index. Okay, that's production instance. So the first prefix here is going to change based on the instance name. So Sitecore have mapped this instance name with the index name, generic index name. So they will replace the instance name with Sitecore keyword. So all your indexes are accessible through the name Sitecore underscore web underscore index, Sitecore underscore master underscore index. Like that you can access it. Okay, so your index name should be like this. Variable index name is Sitecore underscore web underscore index. Okay, ideally you should not put your web here like this, because the search, if you are doing on a preview endpoint, if you are doing a search on a preview endpoint, it has to take the data from master database. If you are doing it on a live endpoint, it has to take the data from the web database. So in order to differentiate between preview and master, we will take the database name from the context. Okay, so db name equal to sitecore dot context dot database dot name. So we'll take that db name and put that here in the index name. That's it. That means if I'm using a preview endpoint, it will give me master data from master index. If I'm doing live, it will give me data from live in web index. Okay, I've created index. Now using that index name, I'm going to get the index object. Okay, so I'm going to code on the Sitecore content search API. Before I start my coding, I have to add the API onto my project. Okay, so I'll go to tools, NuGet package manager, manage NuGet packages. I'll look for something called Sitecore dot content search. Okay, it will be inside the Sitecore package source, Sitecore dot content search. I'm going to add it into my project. 10.4 version install. Okay, so I have added the search now. Then I can now look for I search index, which is part of sitecore.content search. So sitecore.content search, I search index, and I can take on the index variable. The index can be uh, retrieved from content search manager, which is also part of sitecore.content search API. Content search manager dot get index. I'll give you the index name here. Okay, so I'm getting the index. Using the index, I'm going to create a search context. So I'm going to create a search context. I provider search context equal to index dot, using this index dot create search context. Create search context. Okay, now variable result, search result, I can call it as search result. Search result equal to context dot get queryable. Always the return type of my search will be of a similar type called search result item. Always, no matter what I'm searching, my return type will be search result item. I can customize this return type with whatever the specific field I want to do. That is like diving deeper into search. We can customize it. I can have a product search result item, product search result specific to the product item. Okay. Now I'm just doing a generic search result item. And here I'm just checking whether it is part of a product template or not. So x dot template name is equal to template name is equal to custom product. Okay, I'm just checking the template name custom product, and then we are getting the query, right? So we have to search for this query. So where x tends to x dot content dot contains query. I'm getting the query, and then I'm projecting that output into my select. So what is the output I need to get? Product result item. Okay, and it will have a search title. I will get the search title from the field called title. If you remember, we have a title field in our template, right? So in our template, we have a title field and a description field. So we will use those two fields. Search description equal to x dot fields of description. I'll only populate search title and description as of now. So this one I will change it to a list, and I can return the search result. That's it. So I have accepted the query. If at all this endpoint is been hit, it will accept the query and it will check whether the query is not null. If it is not null, it goes into the Solr using the content search API. It is trying to create a search context, trying to search for the query in the context, and returns the output in this format. returns the output in this format. We can do little more complications here. We can add predicates to this search. We can add more filters to this search, facet based search, boosting based search. You can add as many complexities as possible to this. This is a very simple query that I have written. Fine. Now I have a endpoint. Now I have to expose this endpoint from my Sitecore environment. If somebody is calling a particular endpoint URL, it has to come and hit this API. How to make that? I have to create a custom route, because Sitecore by default is having a route. It is by default having a routing engine which routes the URLs coming into the Sitecore servers to the corresponding Sitecore context. Okay, it first resolves the site and then it resolves the Sitecore item and stuff like that. So it has a lot of pipelines running in the background to go and search for a corresponding Sitecore item. Now we are going to create our own custom route so that it doesn't conflict with the Sitecore's out of the box stuff, and it has our own separate routing engine which routes the request directly to this method. So I'm going to create a new route here. I'll add a folder called route, and here I'm going to add a new class. I'll call it as product routes. I'll have a method called public void process, which will accept argument pipeline arcs for the routing. And I'm creating a config variable from the global configuration dot config, global configuration dot configuration. So I'm taking the config variable. Inside the config variable, I'm going to configure my route. Config dot routes dot map http route. I'll call this as product API. It is product API, and it has to come from product API slash, I can give the controller name and then the action method name and then the parameter. If I want anything, any parameter, if I want, I can pass on the parameter, whereas the parameter is actually an optional one. So I'll just add new parameter equal to route parameter dot optional, where the parameter is an optional one. Okay, control KD. Now this is the route. So if somebody is calling my Sitecore instance slash product API slash my controller name and action, it has to come to this route. Use this route and execute it. Now in order to pass on this route to my Sitecore instance, I have to add a configuration. So I will add my app config include. So it has to go into this app config include folder all the time. So I'm just pointing out Altudo folder there so that it is specific to my project, and I'm going to create a configuration file. So I'll call this as custom routes.config, custom routes.config. We will write a configuration file here. I can use any sample configuration file from the example if I wanted. So under configuration, first of all, I have to add the namespace for the configuration, XML namespace patch it has to be www.sitecore.net/xml config. It's the namespace. If it is that namespace, then it will understand the Sitecore node. So under Sitecore, under pipelines, under initialize, we have the processor. So this is the initialize pipeline. So we are customizing the initialize pipeline to add the custom route for us. So I'm going to add my processor type. So it has to take it from my namespace dot the fully qualified name of my custom route, product route, and the library name. Okay. So it's not process, it's processor. Cool. Now this configuration will enable my custom route, and my custom route will then resolve it to this controller here. Let me publish this. Right click, publish. Let me deploy this, whatever we have published. Go to bin foundation customization. I'm deploying it into my Sitecore. I have to deploy the config files. So include, this is the config file which we just created. I'll deploy that. I will add my new config file. Okay, the new route loaded without any issues. That's wonderful. Now, if I go into Sitecore instance, product API slash, what was my controller name? Product search controller, and slash, what was my action method name? Get search result question mark query equal to galaxy. If I do this search, you see here, I'm getting the result, right? So based on whatever the query I'm writing, I'm getting the research result output here. That's exactly what the endpoint that we are looking for. All I have to do is use this API URL in my front end code. So in my front end code here, I have to just change my API URL to this URL. Okay, so it is going and hitting this URL now. It was not reflecting previously. Okay, so ideally if you hit this URL, you will get the output, but here it is throwing an error. What error? Course error. This naturally happens because you're trying to execute your application from local host, and you're trying to do the cross origin. That is, you're trying to call your API from a different provider or different domain name. Okay, ideally when you're deploying your application in a single domain, like your node is also deployed in a single domain and your Sitecore is also coming from a single same domain through proxy, this error will not come. Ideally on your production environment or on your dev environment or on your higher environments, any higher environments, you will be having a common domain name for both your Sitecore environment and your local host and your node server, right? So through proxy you will be routing it through a single domain. single subdomain. So this issue will not come. It will automatically load, right? Otherwise, if at all you are having multiple domains, like for example your rendering is deployed in a separate domain and your Sitecore content is coming from a separate domain, and if you are using this fetch, it will definitely cause you problem. It should give you a coarse origin issue. Okay, so one option is you have to whitelist your origin in your Sitecore environment, right? Whitelist means anyone whose domain is whitelisted in my local, it will accept the corresponding domain and it will not throw course issue. Okay, so in order to whitelist, what we do is we can go to our method and we can say enable course. In order to enable course, I have to install a package called Microsoft package ASP.NET course. Enable course, and I can choose what origin it has to enable. I can whitelist my domain name here. Just give star here, so it will whitelist everything. Ideally, you have to give the domain name. You have to give what header it has to access, what method it has to access, all those things. If you are giving clearly, it will whitelist only those things and it will not, it will block everything else. So I'm deploying this. Right click, publish. Okay, let me deploy this onto the environment. Now my source API is accepting cross origin. Then my React will not be having any trouble in accessing it. Let me check for the search query. Yes, search query is also loading fine. So let me now look for my output on my UI. I'm looking for Galaxy. Click on search. There you go. You have your result output displayed. Okay. Now you can see here the result is coming without reloading the page. It is making an Ajax call and returning back your result for you on the UI. We can complicate this search a little bit. These where conditions, right? It's kind of like a hard coded ones. So you can dynamically pass on the filters through predicates. I can say filter predicate equal to predicate builder dot true search result item. Okay, so like here now I can add any number of filters I want to add here as a filter predicate dynamically. Okay, dynamically in the sense, if I'm looking for if my query is coming with one more parameter like custom product, or one more parameter like product category or something like that, so I can add those filter predicates based on the categories that I'm receiving. If I'm having getting multiple categories, I can add those multiple categories and add loop through those multiple categories and add them as filter predicates dynamically, right? So here as of now, I'll just add these two variables into my predicate. So I'll say filter predicate or and I can add a condition. So here I can say x dot template name equal to custom product. So my main query that I'm writing here, I will not have these var classes here, because that makes my query more complex, right? Instead, if I'm writing a separate filter predicate and applying that filter here directly, the query will be simple and my filter predicate will be like can be modified based on the input I'm receiving. So I can add any complexities as I want. Okay, so this is my first filter predicate. I will add one more filter predicate dot or content contains query. Okay, So it is the same filter predicate here. So what I will do is I will say I will create a template predicate, and this is my template predicate, and I will add one more filter predicate here, query predicate, and this is my query predicate here, and I will add a combined predicate. So like this I can add n number of predicates. So based on the complexity that my requirement is having, I can add anything that I wanted. Okay, so I can say or template predicate. So I'm adding multiple predicates into a single predicate. Like this, I can have n number of predicates. I can add whatever the requirement I have. For example, I want to filter out based on its range, based on its time, based on its price, based on all those values I can fetch through my query string, and using the query string, whatever is been given in my query string, based on that I can write my logic to add these predicates. If something is not provided, that predicate is not added, right? Based on that, so my complexity is here and not here. So here what I will do is instead of this, I will just say dot filter and add my combined predicate into it. That's it. So I can build as complex query as possible here and pass on that here. It will automatically filter out my result for me.